Are you just utterly exhausted? Look, if your mind feels like a stormy sea of endless notifications, overflowing to-do lists, and that constant nagging pressure to just do more, you are definitely not alone. We live in a world overflowing with light and sound, where a massive amount of information literally floods our minds in the blink of an eye. But what if the ultimate antidote to all this modern burnout was actually an 800-year-old philosophy? Well, welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack the teachings of a truly remarkable Zen master named Dogen. We're going to explore how the absolute radical act of doing absolutely nothing might just be the single most powerful way to change your life. Okay, let's dive into this. We are so conditioned by the modern world to believe that we've got to be constantly moving, constantly achieving, constantly thinking, right? We try to prove our worth by what we produce. We end up totally trapped between regrets about yesterday and all these anxieties about tomorrow. But there is a revolutionary alternative here, Zazen, or the practice of just sitting. And to be clear, this isn't about sitting to gain wealth, fame, knowledge, or honestly, even peace of mind. It is about letting go of the pursuit entirely. By just stepping away from the urge to do, we engage in a quiet yet incredibly powerful revolution against the exhausting demands of modern life. Section 1. The Prison of the Self, Escaping Exhaustion. So Dogen's philosophy suggests a fascinating, albeit kind of uncomfortable truth. That deep, bone-weary exhaustion you feel, it's because you're locked inside an invisible prison, and the name of that prison is yourself. We trap ourselves in this really rigid shell of ego, constantly trying to protect our identity, prove our value, and just consume more information so we can feel secure. But as Dogen points out, gathering more external information, that just makes us more confused. To unlock the door to this prison, we have to do the unthinkable in our modern world. We have to completely drop the impulse to constantly achieve. We literally just have to sit. Section 2. The Search for True Meaning, Dogen's Journey. Now, Dogen wasn't just some detached guy in an ivory tower. His journey was born out of profound, highly relatable pain. At just 8 years old, he lost his mother. As her body was cremated, he watched a single trail of smoke fade into the vast blue sky. And in that heartbreaking moment, he realized with piercing clarity just how impermanent and fragile life truly is. That fading smoke sparked a desperate quest. He vowed to find real meaning. He went to Mount Hiei, which was the center of Buddhist learning in Japan, but he honestly just found frustration there. Eventually, this burning need for truth pushed him to risk his entire life on a treacherous, storm-tossed ocean voyage to Song, China, just desperately searching for a true master. The whole frustration Dogen felt back at Mount Hiei really boiled down to one massive, agonizing question. If we're inherently enlightened, why do we suffer so much? You see, the scholars there taught that all living beings are born with a Buddha nature, meaning we're already enlightened. Dogen was like, wait a minute. If we're already enlightened, why is the world so full of misery, and why on earth do we have to undergo all these grueling practices? He took this question to the greatest scholars, but instead of giving him a real, living, breathing answer, they just quoted complex texts and threw logic puzzles at him. He was drowning in a sea of words, freezing in a temple, feeling completely alone with his existential dread. Section 3. Enlightenment in Everyday Actions, Finding True Zen. So after finally arriving in China, feeling super isolated and dealing with awful language barriers, Dogen visited a temple near a port town. And there he saw an old monk, a guy over 60 years old, working as the tenzo, the head cook. This older man was hunched over under a brutal, scorching sun, sweating profusely, painstakingly drying shiitake mushrooms on the bare ground. Dogen, with his pristine, high-minded academic background, was utterly baffled. Here is a senior monk essentially doing the sweaty grunt work of a junior novice. So he walked right up to the old man and asked, "Why are you doing this grueling work yourself in this heat? Why not wait until it's cooler or, just have a younger monk do it for you?" Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how that simple, completely unpretentious reply from the old monk struck Dogen like a lightning bolt. The monk slowly looked up, stared straight into Dogen's eyes, and said, "Others are not me. If not now, when?" Wow! It completely shattered Dogen's intellectual arrogance on the spot. The old monk wasn't drawing mushrooms to somehow achieve enlightenment later. The act of drawing mushrooms with his whole being was the enlightenment. He realized you just can't outsource your own spiritual practice to someone else, and you certainly can't wait for a better time to actually live your life. This interaction entirely blew Dogen's mind. He suddenly got it. True Buddhist practice isn't locked away in dusty texts or complex philosophical puzzles. It's about bringing complete,
wholehearted presence to the mundane chores of daily life. Sweeping a room? It isn't just cleaning, it's clearing the dust from your own mind. Eating a simple bowl of white rice is about deeply feeling the sunlight, the rain, and the immense labor of the farmers in every single grain. When you listen to someone without judging them, when you do your daily job with full devotion, or honestly, even when you just surrender to sleep at night, if you do these things completely in the present moment, everyday life transforms from a chore into a profound, sacred practice.
Section 4. Body and Mind. Dropping off. Eventually, Dogen met his true master, Rujing, and began practicing intense, freezing cold zazen. Now, if you have ever tried to sit in silence, you already know that your brain immediately starts screaming with random thoughts, right? It's like a mental traffic jam. Well, Dogen had a brilliant way of framing this. A younger monk once complained to him that sitting only made his mind noisier. Dogen explained that a noisy mind is definitely not a failure. It just means your life force is vibrant. He said we shouldn't fight these wandering thoughts. Instead, treat them like visiting guests. Just say hello to them and kindly let them pass by. When you stop fighting them, those guests eventually stop overstaying their welcome, and you finally find the quiet eye of the storm. This entire practice culminated in a massive, life-altering breakthrough. One early morning during meditation, the monk sitting right next to Dogen dozed off. Master Rujing suddenly roared out, "Zazen is about the dropping off of body and mind. What use is there in just sleeping?" And he struck the sleeping monk with a wooden stick. Crack! At the exact moment Dogen heard those words and that deafening sound, his invisible prison just shattered. The thick, stubborn shell of his ego collapsed completely. He experienced what's called Shinshin Datsuraku, the profound dropping off of body and mind. The entire separation between himself and the universe simply vanished. He finally realized the truth he'd been searching for since he was an 8-year-old boy watching that smoke. It was there all along. Dogen's awakening deeply, fundamentally changed his view on our greatest human fear: time and death. On his deathbed, he actually taught his weeping disciples a totally new way to see time. We usually think of time as this straight line that's constantly stealing our lives, just ticking away from past to future. But Dogen said no, time doesn't just pass away, it arrives. It's like a season. Think about it. Spring doesn't become summer. Spring arrives fully as spring, and winter arrives fully as winter. Life is one full season, and death is another full season. They are just passing seasons of one great cosmic life. When we really grasp this, we stop fearing change, and we find true, lasting peace. Section 5. The practice of just sitting. The ultimate practice. So the crucial point is how you actually apply this to your noisy, demanding life right now. Dogen left us with 2 paths that act kind of like 2 wheels of a single cart. The first wheel is everyday mindfulness, treating every single action, from washing the dishes to just walking down the street, as an act of profound devotion. And the second wheel is shikantaza, the radical act of just sitting. By actively choosing to do nothing, you intentionally thin out that rigid wall of your ego. And here's the beautiful part. When that wall gets thinner, you suddenly start feeling the joy and the pain of others as if it were your own. True, boundless compassion just naturally begins to flow out of you. Which leads us to perhaps Dogen's most famous, and definitely most paradoxical teaching: to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. Now, I know it sounds like a riddle, but it's actually deeply practical. Your search for peace, your search for meaning, it ends exactly at the moment you stop obsessing over yourself. When you finally forget your small, anxious, scheming ego, you suddenly become brilliantly illuminated by everything around you. You realize that you are already connected to the whole shebang. The entire universe literally steps up to support you the very moment you manage to get out of your own way. So what will you do with your now? We spend so much of our precious lives waiting for some distant future, right? Thinking we'll finally be happy when we get that promotion, finish that massive project, or finally find a break in our schedules. But as Dogen learned all those centuries ago from a sweaty old cook drying mushrooms in the sun, life is shockingly short. The radical power of doing nothing isn't about laziness. It's about waking up. So the next time you feel the urge to endlessly scroll on your phone or stress over tomorrow, just ask yourself, what happens if I just put everything down and simply sit? Dogen left behind volumes of wisdom on the incredible things you might discover in that profound silence. But the real question is, are you brave enough to find out?